I'm Sherry Burr, and I have a co-host for this show, Matthew Gandert, who's a currently enrolled law student at the University of New Mexico. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. And our special guest is Gerald Weinberg, who's the author of nearly 40 books, including Weinberg on Writing. Welcome, Jerry. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Jerry, this is called Weinberg on Writing, the Fieldstone Method. Can you explain to us, to the audience, what the Fieldstone Method is? What makes your book on writing unique?
There are two things in human society that last like 5,000 years, and that people have built, and we still retain. I saw, maybe you've seen the Stonehenge in news recently, where they've been digging up. And stonework is one of the two things. Now, what's the other one of the two things?
Well, I'm assuming you're going to say writing.
That's correct, right? We have Babylonian texts from 5,000 years ago, and they're still around. I won't tell you they're mostly legal texts, actually, interestingly enough. These are things that human beings have been making for a long time. And it turns out that there are very, very strong parallels between the two things.
Between building stonework and writing?
And writing.
Okay.
And particularly building, not brickwork, but stonework with fieldstones. Fieldstones, in case you don't know, are stones you find in the field, just as they are. You know, and they're different shapes and colors and sizes, textures, just like the material for your writing. And the way I always used this method. I didn't have a name for it, and I never really thought of it quite this way. I was working with the son of a famous writer, Richard Bach, some of you know, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and some of those books. And his son was a student of mine, and he had a contract to write a book, a very nice advance and everything, but he knew the subject very well, but he wasn't getting anywhere, like a lot of writers. He was just stuck, you know, and he came to me for help, because that's one of the things that I've done for my whole career, is I'm kind of a writing therapist.
Oh, a writing therapist.
Okay. And so I'm trying to explain to him how I do this. And what it turned out was, see, having grown up in the household of a famous writer, he was trying to write the way his father wrote, right? That was his role model. And it wasn't his way. It didn't work for him. So I said, well, there's other ways. And I told him my way, and he didn't understand it. And I said, well, it's like building fieldstone walls. Well, that he didn't understand at all. See, he's a city boy, he didn't know. So I took him out and showed him some fieldstone walls and talked to him about how they're built, because it's one of the things that I've done. And it turned out to be very powerful. We kept developing the metaphor because it matched very well what I do. You write by, instead of making one big thing and then filling it in, you collect, wherever you happen to be. You don't say, oh, I need a piece that's this size and this length and this, and it says this, but and then you go out and look for it, or you try to invent it. That's why people get stuck when they're writing, okay?
So if we could just capture for the audience, Diego, this book, because in this book you have a picture of a fieldstone wall where someone is building this wall with different types of rocks. Now, Tony Hillerman likes to say that writers are like bag ladies, that they go through life collecting a little bit here and a little bit there, and eventually they produce whatever. And so that's a little bit of like the rocks,
right,
only
right.
you're specifically collecting rocks as opposed to anything that you find.
Well, right, but of course a writer collects all kinds of things, you know, and they're not necessarily rocks. I mean, but the rock is the metaphor. That wall, incidentally, is in front of the Macho Church in Pecos Canyon. Some of you know that part of New Mexico, and it's a pretty old wall and a good example of, you can see in the rock, there are a lot of pictures in there from rocks around the world, because you can see in the walls the good things that people do in writing and some of the bad things they do and how it affects the wall structure and so on. So it's very strong. And one of the essences of the method is that you're a writer, you're always writing, you're always collecting. People who I know who build rock walls, they're always looking for rocks. Right? They may not for any particular project that they're on right now, but they see an interesting rock. They always have their pickup truck, and they just get the rock, and put it in there, and they have it. Okay, because the rock you want, the piece of writing that you want at a particular moment, may not be right there at that time, and this is why you get this idiotic idea of writer's block. See, because it comes from the idea that you write in a certain way. You make an outline, and then you fill in the outline in order, and you know, and that works for some people, right? But it doesn't work for me, and doesn't work for It doesn't work for Tony.
Well, I don't know if writer's block is an idiotic idea, because I myself have experienced it many times for different reasons. I felt blocked. And what I do to get unblocked is I fill the well, as another writer talked about in The Artist Way. And she recommended going out and doing things. So that's what I do. When I feel like I'm stuck, I go to movies, I go to museums, I start traveling, and then I find that the words flow more easily. Or I start reading a novel. Other people's words will unblock me. But I don't think it's idiotic, because I think...
Because you just said, right? She said she was blocked, but then she explained that she wasn't blocked at all.
How did I explain that I wasn't blocked?
Because you went out and see movies, you
Right.
read books, you traveled, you did it, so you weren't blocked. You blocked is you're just sitting there like, oh, what am I going to do?
Well, isn't it blocked staring at the computer screen and there is nothing coming out? Like there is no connection between the brain and the fingers.
But you didn't do that. You didn't say you were sitting there staring at it. You were out traveling, you were reading.
Yeah, I traveled because there was no words coming out.
Well, just for a moment.
No, it wasn't a moment. It was days, months.
Right. Okay, but then you weren't blocked. You weren't blocked, but you thought you were blocked, you see. Because as soon as you thought, oh, no, I got things I can do, then you weren't blocked at all.
Oh, do you
See,
get
that's
this,
what
Matthew?
I mean. That's what I mean by, well, it's like you have a wall in front of you, and you say, oh, I'm blocked because I want to go to that door, but there's some people here, you know, so gee, I'm blocked. And then you sit there. Well, that's just dumb, idiotic. I mean, so you go that way, or you ask the people to move, or you go out the other door.
You're temporarily blocked, at least, until you figure out a better way to go?
Well, it's no significant. I mean, that happens all the time, right? I mean, in life, just little things little problems that come up, and then you do something about it. If you have a brain and you use it, right, then you just keep moving. You find things, and that's a big part of the method, is you always have something to do. My students don't sit for hours staring at the screen, because they know that there's millions of things they can do. Things that you described, you know that,
Right.
or another problem they have is working on one thing at a time. See,
And you don't recommend that?
well, I don't recommend anything,
Okay.
except that you think about your process of what you do and ask yourself, does it make sense for me?
Okay.
Okay? So, when you're writing, it's not just sitting there making up words, right? You have I know for you, because we talked about that, you have to go through all stuff and do proofreading, maybe.
Well,
that was blocking you once.
Right, the
Right.
book called Book Publication Production Process.
Right?
Yeah, because there's a lot of writers who think, oh, well, writing the book is just writing the book.
Right.
But there's this whole process that comes between the time you finish the book or think you finished the book and the time it actually appears